Hello and a very warm welcome. The United States has targeted 3 critical nuclear sites in Iran, stepping into Israel's fight to stop Tehran's nuclear ambitions. This daring strike has sent shockwaves across the region, raising the stakes and fears of a wider conflict. To help us unpack the implications, we are now being joined by Glenn Diesen, who is an international affairs expert. Glenn, welcome to Firstpost.
Thank you for having me on.
President Trump originally said he'd wait 2 weeks before responding, but he acted within days. What do you make of this timing?
Well, I think he likes to go for deception. Again, this wasn't the first one. It's worth noting that the Israelis launched their surprise attack on Iran during negotiations. And it appears that Trump was doing the same. He argued that they would think about it for 2 weeks and then make a decision, and then launched a strike. From what I understand, there were some efforts also to deceive with some other flights going along a different path to make it seem as if an attack wasn't imminent. Again, this is very unfortunate as well. There's military benefits, obviously, for launching surprise attacks in terms of going for a decapitation or a knockout blow. But the problem, obviously, is no one can trust the United States again if it keeps arguing that it's merely looking for diplomatic solutions and at the same time striking. Indeed, immediately after the United States attacked Iran, Trump comes out and say, well, now is time for peace, and don't you dare to respond and retaliate. So I think it's a very tragic day for international law. It's a tragic day for the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's a very tragic day for key institutions, keeping in mind that Trump doesn't listen anymore to his own intelligence services. And overall, it's I think a lot of things were destroyed today. Besides whatever the United States bombed.
Speaking of going on a different path, with the United States entering the Iran-Israel war, tensions are only going to escalate. How likely is that Iran will retaliate against the United States despite Trump's warning?
Well, I think it's more or less given. I can't imagine Iran not retaliating, because there's always a dilemma. I think the fear of Iran would be, if they hit too hard, that it would encourage the United States to become more deeply involved, and this could bring a lot of death and destruction to Iran. So nobody wants a war with the United States. It's a very powerful country. On the other hand, if they do not retaliate, it will merely embolden the United States and other countries. That is, if you can just bomb nuclear reactors in Iran and nothing happens. So they do have to respond in some way. But to what extent? My assumption is that they will try to have a measured response. So they do not instigate too much of a reaction from the United States, so they don't alienate other partners. From the Iranians I've spoken to, I get the impression that they want to be seen as a responsible state. So they don't want to alienate their friends and allies, be it the Chinese, the Russians, but they will respond. But if they didn't respond, their restraint would be interpreted as weakness. If they do respond, it will be interpreted as aggression. So I think there's very little options now than to quickly move up the escalation ladder. Again, it all depends on how the United States will respond to the retaliation by Iran and how strong the Iranian retaliations will be. But the retaliations, I'm quite certain that there will be.
Glenn, you say nobody wants to go to war with the United States. So how seriously should Iran take Trump's warning of further attacks, which he says will be far greater than this one?
Well, there's two competing hypotheses here. One is that Trump got himself, he walked into this difficult position where Israel went to war with Iran, and then Israel was losing, so they kind of were forced into this war. That is, Netanyahu almost tricked the United States into this. If this is the case, then Trump could have launched these attacks. He can appear as the strong man, and he can walk away as a winner. The alternative hypothesis is that the Americans want this war. So whenever Iran retaliates, it will be seen as an opportunity for the Americans to launch an even more powerful attack on Iran. So I think a lot of this, though, is again outside the hands of the Iranians, because the way they see it, they do have to respond in some way. So I would take it very serious. But again, how do you avoid a war with the United States? There's a security dilemma. That is, if you don't respond, you're weak. If you do respond, then they can react. So too little and too much, they're both problems here, and they can both encourage the United States to attack Iran again.
And speaking of diplomacy, until now, Iran's closest allies, Russia and China, have not intervened. What kind of role do you think Moscow or Beijing might play as the situation develops?
Well, as it is now, I can't imagine a scenario where where China or Russia would actually send troops or get involved directly. None of them wants to fight Israel. They don't want to fight the United States. But indeed, Iran has assisted Russia in its war, as the NATO countries are also fighting a proxy war as we speak against the Russians, and they've limited themselves to sending drones and different weaponries. And I think this is likely what Russia and China is already doing, or at least will do, which is to supply intelligence, send weapons or components for weapons. So there's many things they can do. And again, there's already been some unconfirmed reports that this has happened. So I don't think China or Russia can afford to see Iran fall and collapse. So even if it's out of self-interest, they have to help to preserve Iran. Because the way they see it, the reason why the United States want to knock out Iran is the same reason they want to knock out China or knock out Russia. That is, Iran is a key component of this new multipolar world forming in Eurasia. So they would see this as a huge threat to their own national security if the United States would be successful in destroying Iran. And I do think I'm very sure that these countries are interpreting this war not as having much to do about nuclear programs, but rather to be a regime change war to change the map of Eurasia. So I think purely out of self-interest, they will get involved to some extent, but not in a direct fight.
Which leads me to my final question. Could this crisis have a big impact on the global economy, especially when it comes to oil and shipping?
Yeah, I think definitely. That is, the Persian Gulf can already be shut down. Iran has always warned that the Strait of Hormuz, which is a very narrow waterway, in which it can essentially shut down all traffic and create a cauldron for American warships within. But also it can inhibit shipping. It can end a very important corridor for oil. And it could even go beyond this. If other countries get pulled into this, Yemen will likely go back to fighting, given that they can't afford to see Iran fail either. So there's a lot of ways that this can affect the international economy. So again, oil and shipping lanes are a key one. And I think that this is part of the Iranian deterrent. That is, they can launch missiles back at Israel. They can always sink some American warships or strike some bases. The impact on international trading routes and energy prices is a big deterrent, which Iran has always said is a deterrent. So I assume that they will have to follow through to some extent. Otherwise, if you don't deter when your opponents crosses your red line, then your deterrence is gone and they will cross this again. And if there's one thing the Iranians have made very clear, bombing their nuclear facilities is obviously a red line. So I wouldn't be surprised if shutting down some of these trade corridors are part of its retaliation.
And that was Glenn Diesen, who is an international affairs expert. Glenn, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your insights with Firstpost.
Thank you for having me on.